Hi, I'm Stephen McGee, and I'm the author of Health Forensics and Hypoxia, Mental Illness, and Chronic Fatigue. That's me. I'm standing on top of the world's largest telescope at the summit of Mauna Kea on the island of Hawaii, and that's the Subaru telescope. Here to look into toxic altitude. So that's me. That's the world's largest telescope atop Mauna Kea, called the WMKEC Observatory. So we're going to look into notifying sick building syndrome. So this is on page 157. So notifying sick building syndrome. I opted with my past employer to notify them of my sick building syndrome research through a job application many years later. This is the cover letter. So let me just give you a little bit of background to this. We're talking about professional astronomy on top of high altitude mountains. Now, this letter does not relate to Mauna Kea. It's a different mountain I worked on. And I did significant analysis of the toxic environment of the telescope. And I identified a significant number of toxins that these high altitude professional astronomy workers were being exposed to. And the reason why I did that was after working for a decade in professional astronomy, I was super sick. I was like, this has got to be coming from the job because nobody in my family has this sickness I have. So the sickness was unique to me out of my family. Nobody in my family has this sickness that I have. It's called hypoxia, mental illness, and chronic fatigue. That's why this book is here. And I got very suspicious, so I started analyzing the sites I'd worked on. So I came to the conclusion Mauna Kea, the summit of Mauna Kea, is a very, very toxic workplace environment. And I advise people not to work there because of that. But we're going to talk about a different mountain. So this mountain is in Kitt Peak. So Kitt Peak, what it's famous for is a large collection of telescopes. There's about 26 telescopes on top of it. I worked at two of them, and we're going to look at the letter I sent to my employer, or past employer. I'd left them at this point. And I was actually applying for a job with them because I was unemployed at the time. So I used the job application as an opportunity to notify them of my sick building research on their facility. So we're going to go through the letter. So, dear unspecified, please find attached my resume for the observatory. I have already held this position and fell into extremely poor health due to the sick building syndrome that is present at the observatory and was also present at my own home. The management team witnessed this severe degradation in my health during my time there, and my own doctor failed to identify the root cause of the conditions that were showing up, despite many visits to specialists. After leaving the observatory, I later identified the sources of environmental pollution that were causing these wide-ranging conditions and have rectified them. Fortunately for me, I'm one of the lucky few people who has successfully reversed declining health into good health. So what we're talking about here is this book. So that's what we're talking about in that little paragraph is health forensics. So around that time, I researched and wrote health forensics, and it has a lot of stuff in it that I was looking into when I wrote this letter. So you want to find out more about that paragraph, read health forensics. I have excellent management skills, and I have managed large numbers of employees with a wide range of skill sets. I have worked extensively in the university and astronomical environments, and I am fluent in mentoring students and staff. So a key here is students. So this is a sick building syndrome report I'm making to the company, and at this particular facility, there were lots of students coming through. So these are like PhD students, people trying to get their PhDs. And they're working and living at this facility, and they're being exposed to some really shady stuff. So let's carry on. I have first-class skills in astronomy, and I've worked at the premier facilities in this field, including the observatory. I am expert in control systems, construction, large telescopes, astronomical instrumentation, adaptive optics, interferometry, and laser guide stars. I've worked with the leading astronomers in the world during my time in the observing team at the observatory. I am extensively published, and I have made many astronomical discoveries. So what we're talking about is the publishing. So I've published a lot of books, maybe like something like 30 books right now. So that's what we're talking about there. And there's a lot of discoveries in my book that you won't find documented on the internet. My research in the field of astrophysics is currently very active, and I have many more publications in development. I am currently developing the fields of astronomical and man-made radiation. So that's my speciality. My speciality is radiation, and I got into it because I recognized this professional astronomy environment on top of these high-altitude mountains as a high radiation environment, and these workers get radiation sickness from that environment. Now, the radiation is coming from space, so it's somewhat a little bit like a leaky nuclear reactor up there. And you're not going to get as sick as the workers from Chernobyl. So people from Chernobyl and Fukushima, they get a very well-known radiation sickness that can kill them. But this is what happens up here is it's a much lower level than a nuclear accident disaster, and it causes them to get low-level radiation sickness, and it's very unpleasant, low-level radiation sickness. So I did a decade up there, and I had low-level radiation sickness at the end of that decade, and that's why the telescopes are there. They're studying the radiation from space. And for the most part, that radiation is coming from the sun. The sun is a ginormous nuclear reactor. The astronomical environment and how it relates to nature has been overlooked by many astronomers, and it has far-reaching consequences to life here on Earth. I would welcome the opportunity to join the observatory and to develop research in this area. So I'm offering to help them out with their research at this point. I expect to publish many discoveries on this subject in the near future. Well, that's exactly what I did. Indeed, I have discovered new forms of radiation called nighttime interference radiation, tree canopy interference radiation, satellite interference radiation, electromagnetic blue sky, extinction wavelength of light, extinction energy, and the Archimedes death ray in developed human environments. And that is proven, Archimedes death ray in human environments. It occurs around mirrored buildings in downtown areas. The big tall mirrored buildings you see in downtown areas, that's the Archimedes death ray in developed human environments. So there's no doubts about that. And you should be concerned about extinction energy and the extinction wavelength of light, because it may kill every single person on the planet eventually. I have extensively pioneered the science of the ground-level human radiation environment. You will find this knowledge and vision to be a valuable addition to your team. I would welcome the opportunity to return to the observatory and rectify the sources of sick building syndrome that I have identified at your facility. I understand that this position is to replace an unspecified staff member who has a history of poor performance and lacking in the required technical skills. Now, all this poor performance and technical skills was extensively discussed with the management team, both in my interview and when I worked for them. So I worked for them for a few years. So there's no doubts that we discussed this with the management team extensively. I suspect that some of this behavior is symptomatic of the sick building syndrome that is present at the facility. So it's kind of important when you're kind of seeing like poor performance and people making like mistakes in the job and a lack of competency, that you realize that it could be coming from an environmental exposure. at the facility, and it's pretty typical of sick building syndrome when you start seeing all of this weird stuff in the staff, which I reported to the management team many times, and they acknowledged it was there. So they acknowledged it so much the HR person came out and spent a few days out there. So it was certainly very well acknowledged in the company that there was strange stuff going on in the staff at this facility. And yeah, it was never addressed as far as I was concerned. I just left when they didn't deal with it. I look forward to arranging an interview with you in the near future, and I hope that you choose to return your staff to good health. So this is what is going on in the USA. Choose to return your staff to good health. USA employers don't want to do that. So you can report sick building syndrome to your past employer all you like. They're probably going to ignore you in the USA. You have a legal requirement to provide a safe workplace. Well, that's the law. That's OSHA law. So OSHA is the health and safety people in the USA. And you check out OSHA's website and you'll find this. Legal requirement to provide a safe workplace. So I had them assessed of not doing that. That's why I sent them the letter. So there you go. I sign off. Stephen McGee. That's me. It is probably the most enjoyable job application I have ever sent. Yes, I did really enjoy writing and sending that job application. I was laughing as I sent it to them. As a chartered electrical engineer, I was required to send it to comply with OSHA law. So I was just following OSHA law when I wrote that. I am sure you can tell I did not want the job. What idiot would want to return to a sick building syndrome facility? So I was actually so glad I didn't get the job, but they never contacted me. I sent in this application to them, it just went off into a black hole. Nobody ever tried to discuss what I found, and you'll notice in the application I didn't actually tell them what I found. I just put it all under the label of sick building syndrome. We're going to go into what I did find. You'll notice that I did not disclose the details of what I found to be suspected of causing sick building syndrome. I was curious to see if they would want to know, and I was expecting them to contact me to find out what I knew. I never heard from them. So you have a company that has been notified that their workplace has a suspected sick building syndrome problem that does not want to know what it is. So I was shocked that they didn't contact me to find out what this sick building syndrome was that I'd identified. Unfortunately, this is how toxic workplaces continue to thrive, and this is so prevalent in the USA. So you need to be very careful about taking a job in the USA because you may end up in one of these toxic workplaces. If they had contacted me, this is what I would have told them about. So sonic boom exposure from the nearby supersonic military jets, suspected vibroacoustic disease. So this vibroacoustic disease that is linked to sonic booms. And it was happening all the time at that facility, these military jets. This particular facility is by a military bombing range, and the jets go supersonic when they go out there. So you get these sonic booms happening all the time. It shakes the building when they happen. So it's pretty distressing to actually experience it. A pulsed radio wave field across the entire mountain. Well, I detected that with a radio wave meter, and the whole mountaintop was pulsing. You could detect it for miles. Mishandling of the mercury systems by the employees. Well, yeah, this particular company had a history of mishandling mercury systems to the point where they have workers that have died from mishandling mercury systems. So it's still going on in this company. Mishandling of nitrogen gas by employees. That was going on in every professional astronomy facility I worked at. And nitrogen gas is so toxic. They use it to kill prisoners in the USA. So you got a death sentence, you may get put to death by nitrogen gas. So that was happening at every facility I worked at in professional astronomy. Suspected oxygen deficient environment. Well, when you go up into these high altitude mountains, you're going into oxygen deficient environments. There's less oxygen up there. Dirty electricity problems. I know exactly where the dirty electricity problems were at this particular facility that we're talking about. Stray voltage current frequency issues. That's another form of dirty electricity. Wireless transmitters located too close to employees. Well, I had one sitting right on my desk in the printer. And I was sitting next to the electrical room, so employees sitting too close to electrical rooms. So my desk was right next to the electrical room in this company. And electrical rooms give off a lot of EMF and make people sick. It's very well understood. You don't want to sit next to an electrical room. Employees sitting too close to electrical and electronic equipment. Excessive electromagnetic interference emissions. Yeah. People sleeping too close to electrical rooms. Well, it's actually interesting because it's kind of like a hotel up there. One of the rooms was right next door to the electrical room, so you don't want to sleep next to an electrical room. You can make you sick. Open drains, possibly venting sewer gas into the facility. So, as I say, it was a residential facility. People would sleep there. And the rooms weren't inhabited very often at full capacity, so it's possible the drains were drying out. When drains dry out, they open up the sewer system and vent sewer gas into the building. Possible storage issues regarding toxic products. Yep. I remember, I think we had mercury stored in the office. So that's kind of what that's... I think we had a number of chemicals around the workers that were stored around the workers. They should be stored outside in vented cabinets. Not regularly cleaning the drinking water dispensers. I never saw anyone clean a drinking water dispenser when I was there. It's nasty. You get all kinds of weird stuff in drinking dispensers that aren't cleaned. This is not a complete list, just a recollection of some of the things I was looking to at the time. Why would they not contact me to find out about what I have found? Because if they had, they would have had to fix the problems. So that's why they never contacted me. They didn't want to fix these issues. It was inconvenient to know what I knew. Regarding the sonic boom exposure, this is what the Wikipedia article Vibroacoustic Disease states. Vibroacoustic disease is a medical condition manifested in those who have had long-term exposure to large pressure, amplitude, and low-frequency noise. The disease is said to lead to heart arrhythmia or even death. In a study conducted for Puerto Rican Governor Calderon, 48 of the 50 Vieques residents tested were diagnosed as suffering from a thickening of heart tissue caused by exposure to sonic booms. Simultaneously, the Ponce School of Medicine conducted an independent study and found other data to confirm the presence of vibroacoustic disease. 79% of Viequensis fishermen have thickened heart tissue, which is the main symptom of vibroacoustic disease. And you'll find that article on Wikipedia under vibroacoustic disease. I think the article is much bigger. Just something I will say about this is... in the years after working at this facility, I developed heart arrhythmia. It wasn't too long after, just a few years after I worked there, I was going to the doctor with heart arrhythmia. So I had all these vibroacoustic exposures from the sonic booms from the military jets flying over. And they're so powerful that the buildings shake like crazy when they come through. It's like an earthquake when they come through. As far as I'm aware, the company has not medically researched vibroacoustic disease in their staff. I developed heart arrhythmia just a few years after working there. I still have it today. It feels like a few seconds of skipped heartbeats when they occur. So it's kind of weird, heart arrhythmia. Anybody who's had it will tell you it's weird. You just feel your heart go into this like really strange set of beats for a few seconds and then it passes. So I get that frequently, and it's been happening since I worked, shortly after I worked at this facility, and the years afterwards I developed it. So I want to finish this chapter with your little note about the law. So here we go. You have the legal right to a safe workplace. It's probably the biggest piece of propaganda poop I've ever heard. You don't have the right to a legal, safe workplace in the USA. OSHA is a ghost. Do not believe the OSHA propaganda that is on the OSHA posters in your workplace. You go to OSHA, it's highly unlikely you are ever going to get your legal rights upheld by OSHA. So OSHA is this ghost. It's widely acknowledged by people that research health and safety that OSHA is just this dysfunctional ghost in the USA, and it upholds hardly any complaints. So it's very dysfunctional, the USA workplace, because OSHA is very dysfunctional also. So we now know what happens when OSHA does not enforce health and safety laws that employees are reporting to them. You end up with all the stuff we're seeing today, kind of jet airplanes falling out of the sky, killing everybody on board, and doors blowing off, and just all the kind of weird health and safety stuff you see in the news. So that's coming out of this. You have the legal right to a safe workplace. You don't have the legal right to a safe workplace. This is a propaganda statement from OSHA. And when you see this statement, you should realize it is propaganda. If you don't believe me, look it up. Try and find out how many percent of cases get upheld by OSHA in the USA, and you'll be shocked. It is so few. It is truly unbelievable. So you got this USA with this dysfunctional health and safety workplace law system that just doesn't work for the most part. And yeah, that was kind of my experience with health and safety in astronomy. I just came to the conclusion the reason why all this is happening is because of a dysfunctional OSHA. So that was Toxic Altitude. The book covers the toxicity of altitude in professional astronomy. It's applicable to other professions such as aviation, so pilots, cabin crew, mountain climbers, truck drivers that drive all over the USA going to high and very high altitude locations and down to sea level. Sea level adapted humans going to high altitudes such as like hiking, skiing, mountain climbers that go to very high altitudes. They'll all find this book useful. And one of the things to be aware of with toxic altitudes is if you have it too long, you may end up in hypoxia, mental illness, and chronic fatigue. And these are books that not only discuss these conditions, but they also offer solutions. And the supplementing protocol I use to treat my illness is in both books. Health Forensics is an interesting read. Talks about what I was looking into before I started making the links across into the altitude industry. And there's a little chapter about altitude in here, but it's a much more diverse book looking into a lot of different things that can make you sick. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Please like the video, please subscribe, and I wish you the very best of health. Thank you.